Welcome, listeners, to On Deck, a podcast by Haversine Funding. We dive deep into specialty finance insights, trends, and strategies that drive success in this unique space. I'm your host, Nolan Reichert, the VP and Head of Originations at Haversine Funding. Today, we have two wonderful guests with us. We have our co-host, Jen Merritt, the President of Haversine Funding, and can't forget about the remarkable Tania Daniel. She has 25 plus years in the industry and is now transitioning into the head of the IFA. Tania, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So today we really want to dive into your background, hear a little bit about your story from being in the industry with factoring and ABL, and then what that transition looked like into transitioning into the IFA. So let's start with your journey. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Factoring is really all I've ever done in my career. Started in my early 20s with LSQ Funding in Orlando, Florida. At that time, we were a smaller group, and I started there doing data entry, verifications, cash posting. And so really kind of started from the bottom, was able to really learn a lot about factoring. I was there almost 10 years. And when I left was VP of operations on the portfolio management, risk management side. So grew up there. Some of my best friends and lifelong friends I met there. When I left LSQ, it was to take a role with Porter Capital in Birmingham, Alabama. So I relocated, which is, something that a lot of people don't do now, but moved from Orlando to Birmingham to go work for Porter. I was there 7 years, I believe, 7, 8 years, and was their COO. And it was a great opportunity for me to take all those things that I had learned at LSQ and be able to apply it in a different way. So I had a great time at Porter, and then an opportunity came to start a new factoring company. And that was always something that I had wanted to do. And so when the opportunity came and I was introduced to Ames, I left Porter and started a de novo factoring company, Ames Commercial Capital. And I was very lucky to have people that I had worked with throughout the years at LSQ and Porter move and come start it with me. We had a great time. And a few years into our journey at Ames, we sold to Mitsubishi. And so that really changed the trajectory of the business and gave me a new experience because I'd always been with independent entrepreneurial type factoring companies, and now was part of something much bigger. And then a couple of years after the acquisition by Mitsubishi is when I started to make the transition to the IFA. That's when our founder, Bert Goldberg, became ill. And that's brought me to where I am today.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's really fascinating how you went from being so in tune with the industry, working for, from Ings to Porter, LSQ, and then making that transition into the IFA. So what was it that was really the driving force or the motivator to make that transition for you?
Yeah, the IFA has always meant so much to me. That's where I've met so many connections, so many friends. It's where I've received some of the best training ever. And it really helped my career so much. And I was on the IFA advisory board when Bert found out he had terminal cancer. And so we just started talking during that process. And it was just very apparent to me that the IFA, I knew it would continue, but I wanted to be part of that. And so Bert and I just started talking about what the plan was for when he wasn't able to be the executive director anymore. And, one thing just kind of led to another. I had the amazing opportunity to really spend a lot of time with him those last few months and really learn so much from him about the IFA and what it meant to him, which really aligned with what it meant to me. And so I just saw it as an amazing opportunity to take this network of people that has changed my life and carry that forward.
I love that.
Yeah.
I started going to the IFA a long time ago. We'll just leave it at that. But I was in factoring and then ABL and then got back in factoring, and it was so different than asset-based lending, just on how you view things and the places I'd worked to where I was working at that time. I had the opportunity to go to every single class and learn as much as possible. And everyone was very welcoming. And I don't know, just felt like you gained all these networking connections through that. And so I just think that's really impressive. It's inspiring that you get to carry that torch forward and continue paying that forward for others in the industry. So that's really cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. It means a lot to me to be able to stay in the industry that has changed my life and that I love so much, and to play a part in making sure that the next generation of people feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. No. And so that kind of runs right into our next question. So how do you envision the future, the next few years, what the IFA looks like in impacting that next generation?
We are very focused on engaging the next group of factoring people, regardless of age, right? So just people new into the industry, certainly the younger people, look, nobody comes into factoring saying, I want a career in factoring. You don't go get a degree in factoring, right? So it's something that people typically, once they find it, they fall in love with it. At least I know I did, and so many of my friends and colleagues have. And so a big part of what we want to do is engage with that next generation of factors and factoring leaders. And so we're doing that in a few different ways. We've been kind of updating our look and feel a little bit. We've been really listening to the feedback from our members and attendees and trying some new things. We started a Next Gen committee who had a great event at our annual conference this year. And we're working on ways to carry that forward and make that something that's a bigger part of the IFA. And so I think things like that, just the IFA has been amazing just the way it is, but just rethinking some things and finding ways to get in that next group of factoring professionals, like you, Nolan, to kind of feel the way that Jen and I have felt about it, right? That it is something that you want to be part of for your entire career.
Mm-hmm. So what kinds of, you're adding the Next Gen committee.
We did.
I know the transportation has been around for a long time. That conference we just got back from, which was great. We loved it.
Yes, that was incredible.
Enjoy the topics, enjoy the networking. I like the close group. But I know you have that sales summit, and that's new. So that's one of your new initiatives as well. How did that come about? Kind of what's the goal? It's coming up, I think, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. And that's something that really came from listening to feedback, right? We have the president and senior execs meeting. That's a great event every year. But we really started to hear and see from that meeting, there's a lot of sales execs, sales leaders that go to that meeting who want more discussion around the issues specific to them. And the president's meeting is more for that CEO level, kind of that sort of topic and discussion. It talks about some sales stuff, but it's not a deep dive into the issues that are facing sales leaders and the sales organization pieces of a factoring company. And so based on some of that feedback, we thought it made sense to offer sales executives, sales leaders, the same sort of meeting and opportunity to network with people in their same roles and to really deep dive and dig into issues that are facing sales leaders in the factoring space. And I think there's quite a few of them, but it's not meant to be, oh, you pay your salespeople 5% commission, so I'm going to call them and offer them 7%, right? It's not about that at all. It's to talk about really the issues that are happening and how are you recruiting people and what sort of new things are you trying, or technology, and just all of those sorts of things. So we're really excited about that. It's new, but I think there's a real need in our space for it. And we're listening to the feedback and thought it was worth a try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited. We're going to go to that too, and we're excited to go. Especially to see, because you're right, the president's meeting is more overall business growth. What are the trends you're seeing? What are the risks you're seeing? How are you addressing it? And there is some discussion on, business development, but not a deep dive. I'm curious how the interaction is going to be as far as how open people are going to be, and how big is that group? Is it limited, or is it anyone can go because it's the first time, and see how that rollout is and how many people show up? But I'm curious to see how they're going to talk and how transparent people will be about, recruiting or structuring deals or
Challenges that they're
communicating.
still
Right.
Yeah. And it's not limited this year because it is our first time. And so we want to bring as many people together as possible. We do have Chris Rains, who will be one of our speakers, and we'll deep dive into the recruiting market and talk about what that's like. And I think we've really found, especially over the last couple of years, that I think it used to be people were very guarded about the things they talked about with other factors. But I think it's not that way anymore. At least, for the most part, it's not that way. And when you're coming to a summit like that, or the presidents and senior exec meeting, you're coming to share ideas and to crowdsource information. And so I feel pretty confident that this will be a group of people who are very open to sharing.
Okay. No, that's good.
Yeah. And so kind of shifting our focus, but speaking of new things, being so close to the industry, industry leaders and owners and sales execs as you are, what are some predominant trends that you're seeing currently in the factoring world?
Sure. Yeah, there's a few things. I think the overriding one that's affecting every factor is just all of the legislation that's trying to come down on the factoring community, right? There's all of these disclosures happening state to state, and it's just really affecting the way that factors can do business. We see factors pulling out of a lot of states, especially states like California, where it's just so difficult to comply with what's happening there, what California is asking factors to do. So I think that's certainly something that everyone needs to be aware of and be looking out for. Our lobbying group, the American Factoring Association, is working really hard on monitoring all of that, getting the word to the lawmakers on how these regulations are impacting factors. But I think that's certainly a trend, albeit a negative one, but a trend that's really facing the industry. And I'll just say that if you are a factor and you are not a member of the AFA, I strongly encourage you to become one, because we're fighting a fight that's much bigger than any one factor, and it's really going to take all of us together. So that's certainly one trend that will impact, I think, the way factors do business in the future. It already has started to. Certainly, we just came back from the transportation meeting in Nashville, which was a great event. And if you are a factor who factors transportation receivables, there's a lot happening in that space, a lot of fraud happening, double brokering sort of issues. Of course, freight rates have been down. And so that's been something that a lot of transportation factors have been dealing with and trying to work through and figure out. And it seems like there's hope that will turn around when that actually is, whether it's this year or next year. I think there's still some uncertainty, but it was very interesting to hear this week what transportation factors are doing with this time of change and transition, and how they're pouring that back into their factoring companies. So there's a lot happening in that space. And then I just think in general, I hear from every factor I talk to, overwhelmingly, that everyone's kind of just waiting for the business, right? I think obviously during COVID, competing with free money from the government was not easy. Supply chains down. So just business volume automatically went down when clients couldn't get in product and that sort of thing, or didn't have employees to work. But I think the expectation has been that as we get further away from that, the free government money dries up, and interest rates rising, banks tightening up, that there's going to be this floodgate of business that opens up for factors, banks kicking people out, or businesses needing more flexibility, or just rethinking their current financing because interest rates are high. But factors are seeing the business, but it's not what they're expecting. It's not converting. I think businesses are still just kind of in a holding pattern, a little uncertain what to do because of the current market. And so that is a trend I'm seeing across the board with every factor, is just this sort of waiting game. And there starts to be some excitement because pipelines start to fill up a little bit. But then it's just not quite converting at the levels that I think most people were anticipating quite yet.
When you have talked to everybody about that, I know we talked about the transportation piece, and I know we went last year and then this year, and last year it was, the common hope was that it would already be turned around by now. So there is that hope going forward, that it'll be another 6 months, a year, right. Who really knows? But when you add that into the government funds, whether it's ERC credits, which are now paused, I think after the end of the year or something like that, and the regulation and all these things with the tightening, what have been the reasons that you've heard in the industry about why those deals are taking longer to transition, or maybe the banks aren't kicking them out fast enough, or not increasing lines? And there's that flow, and people expected it to be a lot more. I know we did as well, as far as everyone anticipated for our lender network and factors, that more deals would be coming, and they haven't. So what other reasons have you heard, or what are the assumptions people have said on what they're thinking that's causing that?
I think in some cases it's just it's hard to unwind the business from its current lender. They may be over advanced, or have advanced on collateral that a factor is not comfortable advancing on. I've had people come and ask if I know who is advancing on intellectual property, or just lots of equipment that's not valued at what it used to be. So I think it's hard to unwind. There's businesses that are upside down, and I think that's been part of it. And then I think I've also heard that there's just a lot of businesses that are kind of going through the process and then just almost ghosting the factor, right? Like they know they need something, but they're not quite ready to do it. And so it's getting, even signing factoring agreements, but then just not submitting receivables. So I don't know necessarily why that's happening, other than I just think the uncertainty in the market, recession discussions, all of that sort of stuff, interest rates. I just think businesses are scared to do anything until they are absolutely forced to.
Okay.
Right. So they prepare for it, but they're not quite ready to use it until they have to.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What about with all this, I'm going to call it turmoil, because there's like a lot of activity happening with all of that, right? And everyone's gearing up. I know for us, we've been busier as factoring companies are looking for capital, gearing up for future deals that are coming through the pipeline. Of course, if they're not coming through, it takes longer to get that done as well. What are other trends? Because, we're also seeing more activity with potential acquisitions and things like that, consolidation. And those groups are also seeking capital. Have you seen that? What have you heard about that, or what do you think of that?
Well, we're definitely seeing more bank consolidation happening, right? I mean, it feels like there's less factors selling to other factors, which used to be the way that it was, and more banks coming in and buying factoring companies. And so that's a very interesting trend, and it's changing kind of the dynamic of the industry, certainly the makeup of our membership to some extent. And I'm curious to see if that's something that continues or not. I know just this week at the transportation meeting, I was talking to some folks who were saying, now's not the time to try and sell your factoring company. They're waiting, right? It's again that uncertainty that probably a lot of clients or prospects are feeling. Even the factors are feeling that, but definitely the trend as far as acquisitions is banks or even big PE firms coming in and buying up factors.
Yeah, and I could see the transportation maybe not being in there because if freight rates are down, then their portfolios are down just naturally, waiting. But other industries, I know we've seen like oil and gas and construction or infrastructure growing, and so I'm curious to see what develops there. And I agree, it's not just banks. It's there's credit funds, there's other family offices, but seems like there's a movement to the credit market, which would be everything that we're involved in as factors and finance groups to factors that we are. So yes.
Yeah. And I think that's such a positive thing ultimately for factors, because it just means that factoring is becoming more and more mainstream. People are recognizing it in the market as a first line cash flow working capital tool for businesses, and they see the value. And so these industries or lenders, the banks, the family offices, the PE firms that used to stay away from it, really recognize now what a valuable tool it is and want to get more involved. And I think that's just, a good thing overall for factoring and getting the word out about what a great product it is.
Definitely in a time where obtaining bank financing isn't quite as easy as it was a few years ago. We've definitely seen that flood into the market.
Right. And it's more accepted now. So that's
exactly.
Great. That's a new thing.
Yeah. Groups like the IFA are making the factoring world more known.
Well, that is a big part of our goal, is that advocacy work, right? I think the IFA has always done an amazing job of serving its members, and our members are our top priority. And we are working on new member benefits. We are about to announce a new health care initiative for our members and just things like that, right? So our members are always number one, but also a big part of providing value to our members is educating the market on factoring, right? Making sure that the business owner knows what it is and has some place it can go to learn about it, or the lawmakers who need to know more about factoring, or the bankers who need to know where they can send their clients. And so that advocacy work is a big part of our focus. We are currently working with other associations to educate their members on factoring and to work together to protect the industry. So I'm excited about that piece of it. And ultimately, the more education that we can get out there, the better it is for the entire factoring industry.
Wow, that's exciting. And I think it's very impressive, especially making the jump from using the same knowledge base, right, and expertise that you have, but going into doing this and trying to make a difference for the community and everyone that we work with and partner with. So it's awesome. So, and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Tania. It was awesome going through your journey, providing your insights in the IFA, as well as the trends, what we can expect to see, what's currently happening in the marketplace. I'm sure our listeners are going to be very thankful for you lending your knowledge to us and them. So I really want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for including me, and thank you for all of your support. You're always just such great partners, personally and professionally, and to our members. And so I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Once again, a huge thank you to my co-host Jen, as well as Tania Daniel, for joining us. Until next time at On Deck with Haversine, where we help you stay informed, stay inspired, and stay on course to growing your financial platform for the future.